This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
We promised you we're going to talk a little baseball. And Jordan Mcpherson, baby, he's been eating cheesesteaks and crab cakes and watching the Marlins win. You could follow him, by the way, on Twitter like I and so many others do at J_McPherson 1126. And, of course, catch his work there at the Miami Herald website. He is Jordan Mcpherson. Jordan, good afternoon, my friend. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good, Big O. Just one quick clarification. I did eat a bunch of cheesesteaks, no crab cakes, unfortunately. Shellfish and me, they don't go hand in hand. But
okay.
Otherwise, I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't see any pictures of crab cakes, but I saw. So when you did the Philly cheesesteak stuff a couple of times. Which one was the best one, my brother? Which one?
Jim South, hands down. But also, granted, I only went to 3 places. I was only there for 3 days. And unfortunately, the Marlins don't go back up there this season. But my goal is each time I go up there, I'm going to try to hit as many places as possible. So I think I need to go up a couple more times before I put out a definitive ranking. But Jim South was hands down the best so far.
Okay. All right. I like it. All right. So let me ask you, my man, do you pinch yourself every day and you're like, because this is turning into the best story in baseball. I mean, this is the American story. We love underdogs as Americans. There is no bigger underdog than the Marlins after how young they are and then the COVID attack and Mike Hill has to scramble and put this roster together. And you're sitting there at 6-1, dude. I mean, this is amazing to watch every night.
It really is. And just to go from the complete 180 from, oh my God, the Marlins are going to be the team that shuts down Major League Baseball this year. Of course, it's going to be the Marlins that ruin everything. To how the living heck is this ragtag Motley Crue team with 17 new faces? How did they go 4-0 against the Orioles after 8 days in quarantine, 17 guys being brought up last second, and putting on an absolute show in 4 games over 3 days? It was remarkable to watch live. It's incredible to watch it unfold. The interesting thing now is to see how it continues. Now that they're playing the Mets, they got 3 games there this weekend, and to see what happens really with their starting pitching. They really only have 3 starting pitchers, and that's who they used for 3 of those 4 games. Yeah. So to see how this develops and see how this continues on is going to be the key part to seeing what happens and to see if it was more than just a flash in the pan.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you something, Jordan. Look, if you continue to pitch this way and if you continue to play smart baseball, okay, you know, Brian Anderson just with that blooper in the center field just to drive in the run, the base running yesterday, Cervelli and other guys, there were several examples where they were aggressive but smart in their base running and set themselves up where actually the Orioles in one case had an opportunity to put somebody on third and weren't able to do it because the Marlins, you know, played the proper defense. You know, they're also doing all the things not to beat themselves too, Jordan, which is enormous.
Yeah, that's right, and that's what this team has to do. They've always preached that in order for them, the Marlins preach in order for them to be successful, they have no excuse but to do every single little minute thing correct. If they don't, this team really has no margin for error to do anything else because of just the way the roster was constructed, the fact that they still had a lot of unproven guys, and now they have a lot more unproven guys for the time being. But they've found a way. They've found some sort of continuity, some sort of this confidence that was there from spring training and there over summer camp. It's translated over even after everything they've gone through over the 2 weeks before returning to the field on Tuesday. This team just feels like they're even more tight-knit than ever, and they have this bond and this mental side of them where they all know what each other's doing, and they're finding ways to make that translate to the field, and when they get to the field, to block out everything else that happened. and it's worked so far. And it's a great sight to see.
So it really is amazing how things have developed for them. What's the latest on the COVID side on the players that are out? How long more till they're out of their quarantine?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. There's no set timeline. The main things that absolutely have to happen in order for them to get cleared by MLB is for them to have consecutive negative tests that are at least 24 hours apart. They have to go at least 72 hours with no symptoms, primarily no fever, and they have to be cleared by the team physician and the physician appointed by MLB's joint COVID-19 committee. Those are the bare minimums. And then you have to factor in how long is it going to take for them to get ready to play, get ready to even just go out there and do practices out in Jupiter. It was either Don Mattingly or Michael Hill earlier this week when we got them when all the moves happened. Matt Joyce, it took him about a month after getting cleared to get out there. He had symptoms for about 6 days early on, but for some players, it could easily take them a month before they get back here. I mean, that's not to say that after 2 weeks you can see 3, 4, 5 guys, but I wouldn't expect everybody to be back by the middle of the month.
Oh, that's it really is amazing how they've been. And listen, this also, you know, Jordan, the interesting part about this story, and I talked about this earlier on the show, there's a lot of Chris Greer here with Mike Hill. You know, Mike was never really truly in charge ever. When under Loria, there was always, you know, more chefs in the kitchen. And so Mike now really gets an opportunity to kind of run the show and do his thing here. And, you know, he's been able to show off a lot here in the last couple weeks here because having to, you know, make up for everything that went on with COVID, they had to sign guys, call up guys, make some moves to put the rest of this roster back together again. And this is a great opportunity over the next year or two for Mike Hill to really show that he can build a real champion and a winner here with this team.
It definitely is. And the point I would say, I mean, I don't have the exact info here, but I don't think I've ever seen a team that had to make 17 roster moves all at once. And then for him to have to do it through, obviously the smart move there was getting a bunch of guys off of waiver claims and trade and free agency signings, and then calling up more or less guys who are on the 40-man roster already, just because once guys start trickling back, it's a lot of roster management with that 40-man, which is why we didn't see some of the prospects who aren't on the 40-man, J.J. Blvd, people murmuring about Max Meyer trying to come up right away. Obviously, we knew that wasn't happening. But if you put them on the 40-man roster, they have to stay there, which basically puts a hold on a spot that could be used for one of the guys coming back or one of the guys you called up who you want to keep. It's just once guys start coming back, it's going to be interesting to see how he maneuvers, who he keeps, who he lets go, how he balances everything that's going to have to be put into play here, because roster juggling, even when it's 3 or 4 guys at a time, it's tough. But when you have 17 that are basically in this limbo spot, he could potentially find ways that can either make or break the season depending on how everything morphs over these next 6 weeks.
Jordan, you know, I don't have all the particulars and all the rules, but did they alter? Because as you know, you can only call up a minor leaguer a certain amount of times, and then he runs out. Did that get altered during this time here because of COVID and everything else? Because you might have to call guys up and down a whole bunch of times. Does that take away the amount of times you can call up a guy? Is that affected?
Yes, the way options work is basically if you call a guy up and down, it's the amount of seasons you can do it. So you can call a guy up and down 27 times in the same season, and it would only count as one option year. So it's basically just a matter of when they start their service clock. So guys like Monte Harrison and Eddie Alvarez now, if you option them down, you can auction them down, you can call them back up, you can auction them down, you can call them back up however many times you want to this year, but it will really only affect it the one time. But now you also think about it, there are guys like Magneuris Sierra, he's out of options. So if the Marlins wanted to send him down, they have to completely take him off the 40-man and have him go through waivers. So they still have those type of factors they have to weigh into. It's really more so a matter of the team about which players they want to start the service clock for, more so than the sending them up and down once they bring them up this year.
One of our listeners is saying right now, Big O, this season just proves that Michael Hill was handcuffed with Loria in control. Imagine what this team would look like if he wasn't undermined the whole time. What do you think about that?
That could be a pretty fair assessment. I mean, again, I wasn't directly there when everything was going on before this. I was just on the beat last year. But based off of what I've seen from the last year and a half, last 2 years, he's made there have been some good moves. Obviously, we still need to see exactly how all the big trades from the start of the rebuild ultimately pan out. But from the free agency side and from the moves that he made last week, from the situation that he was put in, I've been impressed. But again, we'll see how everything plays out. We still have a lot of season to go, and we also have to take the fact that it's been 7 games. 4 of those games were against the Orioles, who outside the Marlins were probably the only other low-end team as basically as viewed by the outsiders going into the season. How everything plays out now that they're going to be playing the Mets, they're going to be playing the Blue Jays, they get the Braves here a week from today. If they can keep this up going into the rest of the schedule and that absolutely horrendous end of the year where they're going to play 27 games in 23 days, that's where I think we'll be able to fully make the judgment calls.
Jordan, let me ask you, speaking of those trades, one of them was the Yelich move, and one of the guys that they got in that Yelich move was on the mound yesterday. I can't say I've seen anything that convinces me about Yamamoto yet. Maybe more seasoning down the line, and maybe he can convince me. But man, that ball did not have any movement yesterday, dude. They were like direct shots, and it seemed like for guys like that you've got at the plate, it seemed like you were throwing a big ass, softball at them. The way that ball did not move at all. I can't say that I'm impressed with Yamamoto so far.
Yeah, it was a really rough outing for him. I mean, everything felt like it was either a home run or just inches away from being a home run. It's been ever since, his first 4 or 5 starts were really good, but then teams start figuring out who he was. I mean, he's a guy who has to rely on his command, has to rely on his sequencing, and if he has one slip up, he's going to get exposed. He doesn't have that 96, 97, 98 mile an hour fastball that can just blow past people. If he's not completely on point and completely precise with how he's pitching every single pitch, I don't know realistically how long he'll end up being in the rotation. Obviously, he was in that battle for the number 5 spot with Eliezer Hernandez going into the year, but when you see the waves of arms that the Marlins have down there, with Sixto more than likely being up at some point, whether it's the end of this year or the start of 2021, Edward Cabrera at some point, you got Max Meyer, you got Braxton Gary, you got Trevor Rogers. There are a lot of guys who are going to be nipping at his heel very, very soon if he doesn't figure it out and start putting some consistent outings out there.
He actually looks like reliever material to me. Really, I'm serious. That's when I see that arm, I'm looking. Okay, this is a guy that throws you like you're facing a hard throwing pitcher for 6 innings, and you whip this guy out in the 7th to kind of throw you off a little bit, and then you move on to the 8th with the 8th inning guy as a setup guy. That's what Yamamoto looks to me like. He looks like a middle relief guy, a setup guy.
Yeah, I can definitely see that long term. I can see them moving in there. The problem for the Marlins right now is with the way the roster's constructed, they really don't have starters right now. Right. I mean, they lost 3 of their 5 due to everything going on with COVID. Their starters right now, they have Pablo Lopez, Eliezer Hernandez, and Jordan Yamamoto. That's really it when you look at it. I mean, George Guzman, I can see him, if he figures things out, he could potentially be a two-inning opener type guy. They did that with Josh A. Smith, the second game of the doubleheader. Sterling Sharp and Steven Tarpley both started in the minors. So they have guys they can use, but you don't really have anyone who has actually done it up here outside of those 3. And of those 3, Pablo's been fantastic in summer camp, but the other 2 were fighting to be the number 5 guy.
Right.
So it's really that's really where the team is handcuffed right now, especially for the rest of this road trip. Considering you only have the guys who are on the roster and the guys who are on the taxi squad. And the taxi squad's all relievers with the exception of Humberto Mejia, who hasn't pitched above high A. So it's going to be a challenge, to say the least, to see how they maneuver, at the very least, the first 2 games against the Mets, to see what they do for the 4 and 5 spot before turning back to Pablo.
Well, is it Alcantara tonight, right?
Oh, Alcantara's on the IL.
Oh, IL. So who is it tonight? Because we don't
have a starter yet.
Okay, because they had Alcantara on ESPN. I'm like, okay, so did he clear something that I don't know about, or I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Something has surfaced. No, Sandy, Caleb, and Jose Urania are all on the IL.
Okay.
All the first 3 guys over the year.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, like, okay, so who the hell is starting tonight? Because they like ESPN had Alcantara, and I'm like, what the. Is there something I don't know? Or, with today's COVID stuff going on, I have no idea when these guys are getting cleared or not. And it was just weird to see those names. But I said, okay, well, maybe they know something I don't know. So you don't even know who the starter is yet. So they haven't even announced it?
No, they haven't announced it. Mattingly said pregame yesterday that everything was going to be TBD. They're still trying to maneuver things around because, again, they only have 3 starters, and all 3 of them pitch Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So unless they're throwing Pablo out there on 2 days rest, which should not be happening considering the arm injury, the arm problems he's had each of the last 2 years, they're more than likely going to have to do a bullpen day, at least one of these 2, and unless they try to throw Sterling Sharp or Stephen Tarpley out there for 3 or 4 innings to start the game.
Yeah, it really is an amazing story how they're able to just, survive and be 6-1 at this point. And I got to tell you something, Jordan. Brian Anderson he's my favorite Marlin to watch, dude. He just plays the game the right way. I love watching that guy play.
I completely agree with you. I mean, he was heading into this year. Obviously, he had everything that happened with the hit by pitch that fractured the hand that stopped his season last year a month early. But he was really, really good last year, and I was really interested to see how he would translate that into year 3. He had a couple bumps in the road early on as he was getting his timing back between missing a month and going to rehab over the off season, to then having 4 months off with everything with the shutdown for the season. But now that he's turned it on, and I also think the Marlins moving him down to the 5 hole instead of being 2 in the lineup, that eased some of the pressure off him. That made him feel a little bit more confident back there, knowing that he has a few more hairs in front of him. He doesn't have to be that guy who automatically moves VR over when VR's in the leadoff spot and gets on base. He's able to just be him. And when Brian Anderson's able to be himself, you're going to see a lot of drives into the gap. You're going to see more doubles, more consistent contact. You're going to see a guy who the Marlins need to find a way to keep long-term if they can.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. He's. I was saying earlier that he's the guy that if you're sitting there with your kid watching the game, you're going, look, watch that guy. That's how you want to play this game. That's the way I look at Brian Anderson. By the way, you can follow Jordan on Twitter like I and so many others do at J_Mcpherson 1126. Hey, before I let you go, Jordan, what's been the talk of the guys after the COVID, scare there and it ripped up the locker room? What's changed for them? How much more paranoid do you see them now in the locker room? Because I always feel like a lot of people in the country, the ones that don't take it nearly as serious, it's because they haven't experienced it yet or somebody close to them. And I would imagine that once you've gone through that experience, something changes about you. What has changed with those guys?
No, they definitely took it as a wake-up call. Obviously, when they saw how quickly it spread from 1 to 4 to 13 to 17, all the way up to the 20 that it ended up being, it took them as a wake-up call. Them having to basically isolate and basically be in their hotel room for 8 days for 23 and a half hours out of the day, for them worrying about their teammates and hoping that they're okay. They seem to be. They're taking this seriously. They're taking it They're not taking anything for granted. The second opportunity, this chance they'll be on the field. You can see them. You can see more masks pregame. You can see, at least from the first couple of days when I was at the ballpark in Baltimore, when I was there early enough for BP and warm-ups and everything, they were staggering some of the workouts, staggering some of the stretching, which they didn't do in Philadelphia. You could see more masks. You could see how all of their celebrations are contact-free. You can see that they're trying to do all those little things that they maybe didn't think about beforehand. You can tell they're focusing on it. They're focusing on it and trying to pay more attention to it now.
Well, as we're talking, Friday's series opener between the Cubs and the Cardinals now has been postponed. At least one more positive COVID-19 test in the St. Louis clubhouse has been confirmed. The Cardinals have not played since the 29th of July due to the positive corona test. The team previously announced it had returned 13 positive tests from its traveling party, with 7 of them coming from players. St. Louis had returned to the field for light workouts Wednesday. The Athletic first reported Friday's game has been postponed. So this continues. And Jordan, the problem is, you know how in the NFL they go back and they mortgage money from the future to pay for contracts now. But it's kind of like a credit card that eventually you're going to have to pay the Pied Piper, and you'll have the dead money, and that'll be money you won't be able to use down the line. And so that's what's going on here. They keep ringing up on this credit card a bunch of games. And you said it in our conversation, 27 games in 23 days. That's with no more COVID, tests, positives from here on out. If you have more and you have more delays, it gets to a point where a lot of these teams will not be able to make up these games. And I don't know this whole thing about, you're going to get in by winning percentage. Well, dude, what if you haven't played a lot of games, but yet your percentage is really good? You're taking advantage of the situation too.
Yeah, definitely. And also, it's not just COVID. I mean, we're in the summer. Weather is going to impact some of these games too. I mean, you just have to think about these little things that in a normal season you would have contingency plans for. And now, all of a sudden, a rainout is the farthest thing from anyone's mind as they try to make up all the test loss to COVID.
Right.
So this schedule, there's no way the schedule is going to stay set in stone just based off of everything that normally goes on in a regular season. So there's going to be, I'm really intrigued to see how all this is actually going to pan out. Because, I mean, especially just going from the Marlins side of it. Again, like I said, 27 games in the final 23 days, 4 doubleheaders in a 10-day stretch. They play the Philadelphia Phillies 7 times in they play a 5-day, 7-game series against the Philadelphia Phillies at one point in this. It's getting to the point where, again, yes, you're going to want everyone to get as close to the chance to play all 60 games as possible. And yes, money ultimately does talk. But you also have to think about logistically and from a health standpoint of the players, just from an injury standpoint, how much sense does this really make to add all of this onto the back end just to try to say, hey, we're making sure you play 60 games?
Wow. I don't envy you because I've been the baseball beat guy in radio. I don't envy you on that doubleheader night that there's a whole bunch of rain delays. Oh, Lord. Even if it's 7 innings. Although I will tell you this, the other night on the doubleheader, I completely forgot in the second game that it was 7 innings. And when they got the third out, I was like, all right, we got 2 more innings. But then I hear the announcer, all right, that's the game. I'm like, that's right, it's 7 innings. Yeah. So it's one of those where you had to get used to it, man. It's crazy stuff.
I'm not going to lie. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. When we got into the 5th inning of the first inning of the doubleheader, I looked at my game story and went, oh, crap, I have 2 innings on. I need to start writing. It took me by complete surprise. Even though I knew what was going on, I marked on my scorecard to stop at the end of the 7th inning just as an extra precaution. I still didn't follow myself with that.
That's awesome.
So once we got to the bottom of the 5th and they did the 5th inning stretch, I went, oh, crap, there's only an inning and a half left. Let's get going here.
That is awesome. Follow him on Twitter, J_McPherson at 1126. Catches exceptional work covering your red-hot Miami Marlins every single day. Jordan, as always, you're a stud, my brother. Thank you for taking some time, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. Always great to be with you, Big O.
You got it. Thank you. There you go, man. Jordan Mcpherson. Good stuff there with Jordan. Always enjoy it.